Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here once again for the Shangsheng Institute School of Tibetan Medicine webinar series. Here we discuss traditional Tibetan medicine, its history, its theory, and its modern practice, and Tibetan medicine's role in today's public health and wellness issues. We work with Tibetan medicine in relation and in context with other traditions of medical science and healing, Eastern and Western traditions, philosophies, spiritual paths, along with modern research and technology. Our special guests help us explore all of these things from their fantastic experience with a variety of different fields. We would love to connect with you, so please like and subscribe on social media, and please feel free to join our email list for important updates and announcements about Shangsheng Institute School of Tibetan Medicine international programs. Our guest this week is the international meditation teacher, Steven Landsberg. Mr. Landsberg will help us by sharing insights into the nature of our mental tensions and how we might be able to release those tensions through relaxation into the natural awareness and presence of our minds. We will explore how the tools of mindfulness meditation and the principles of Buddhist Dharma teachings can help us govern our tensions and overcome obstacles in daily life. Our ongoing host, Menpa Phuntsog Wangmo, will share the perspective of traditional Tibetan medicine on mindfulness and the benefits of applying presence in daily life for the balance of our body and our energy and our mind, the three dimensions of the human condition. So thank you all for joining us. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Shangsheng Institute School of Tibetan Medicine. If you're just new to us, our school offers courses and various programs on traditional Tibetan medicine all around the world, in person and online. Our courses range from short lectures and presentations to continuing education units for healthcare providers, as well as our full-length flagship program, the 4-year training in traditional Tibetan medicine, which coincidentally is starting its new cohort in January 2021. We're starting a new round of the 4-year training, and we will be accepting applications for several more weeks up until mid-December. So if you're interested in studying traditional Tibetan medicine or interested in learning more, please do join our email list, follow us on social media, check out our previous webinars, and you can learn about all these things on our homepage at tibetanmedicineschool.org. Our institute, the Shangsheng Institute, our school, as well as the greater international Shangsheng Institute, was founded by our dear teacher and institute founder, Chogyal Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche. Chogyal Namkhai Norbu was one of the world's leading scholars of Tibetan culture, the master of the spiritual heritage of Tibetan Buddhism and Dzogchen teaching. He authored many books and gave many incredibly insightful and precious teachings on a variety of topics pertaining to traditional Tibetan culture and Tibetan spirituality. So if you're interested in learning more about Rinpoche and his works, I highly recommend, and a good site for that is segyogar.org. That's the main center in North America for Rinpoche's teachings. That's segyogar.org. We'll link this in the show notes, and that's going to be TSEGYALGAR.org, Segyogar. Excellent. One more thing I'd like to mention before we get rolling is our Tibetan Medicine National Professional Organization here in the United States, which is called ATMA, the American Tibetan Medical Association. You can check out ATMA at AmericanTibetanMedicalAssociation.org. And this professional organization provides resources for Tibetan medicine practitioners, clients, as well as students and just supporters and interested citizens here in the United States. You can learn more about Tibetan medicine. You can find a qualified teaching program, an educational program. You can find a local practitioner of Tibetan medicine, hopefully in your area, and other resources. So we are currently accepting memberships, professional memberships, if you're a practitioner, student memberships, and supporting memberships. So we would love to have you join the national community of Tibetan medicine by checking out ATMA. All right, everybody. Our guest today, Steven Landsberg, is a mindfulness meditation teacher, as well as an authorized instructor of the base level of the Santi Maha Sangha, the comprehensive Buddhist Dharma training program developed by our founder, Chogyal Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche. This is an incredible program that really presents kind of the enormous spectrum of the canon of important Buddhist Dharma teachings in a very approachable and systematic way. And it's really an incredible resource. And Mr. Landsberg is a certified instructor. He also is a sitarist, a classical Indian music player, and an instructor as well. Steven traveled to India in 1967 and spent 10 years studying classical Indian music and Buddhism. He was authorized to teach the base level of the Santi Maha Sangha by Chogyal Namkhai Norbu in 2010. Steven travels extensively, giving teachings on mindful presence and the Santi Maha Sangha teachings in various countries to a wide audience of diverse students around the world. Steven currently also serves as the president of the International Dzogchen Community. Steven, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, I have to take my video off because the internet's unstable, I think, here.
Sure, no problem at all. Just we're patient, so try it back on once in a while and see if we can get a good connection. Yeah, we would love to see your smile whenever possible. Steven's in Italy right now, I believe. So I'll also like to present our ongoing webinar host, Menpa Phuntsog Wangmo. Menpa Wangmo is a practitioner of traditional Tibetan medicine with over 30 years of experience in clinical practice as well as teaching. Menpa Wangmo received her advanced degree from the Lhasa University School of Traditional Tibetan Medicine. She is the current director of the Shangsheng Institute School of Tibetan Medicine. Menpa Wangmo teaches Tibetan medicine around the world, and she has been the guiding force to develop the programs of the Shangsheng School curriculum, as well as being the head instructor and driving our school forward, and really just with great dedication and perseverance, enabling our school to flourish and teaching many students. So Menpa Wangmo teaches students all around the world, online and in person. She travels extensively, doing programs here in the USA, as well as Spain, Italy, Russia, and other places. Menpa Wangmo is also the co-founder of the American Tibetan Medical Association, the United States Tibetan Medicine Professional Organization. Menpa Wangmo, as always, thank you so much for joining us today. And finally, I will be your moderator. My name is Adam Okerblom. I'm a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine and a practitioner of traditional Tibetan medicine. I am a certified instructor at the Shangsheng Institute and an alumnus of the Shangsheng four-year program. So very near and dear to me. And I was certified to instruct traditional Tibetan medicine by my dear teacher, Chogyal Namkhai Norbu. And it's wonderful to be here joining you for the webinar today. All right, excellent. So let's get started. And it looks like, Mr. Landsberg has a little trouble with internet right now. Steven, are you with us right now? Can you hear me by chance? These international things. We're here in California. We've had horrible problems with this fires, and smoke pollution has just been spreading all across the entire Pacific Northwest, like wildfire, if you will. And so we've been having a lot of disruptions of travel, a lot of disruptions of communication, and so it's a little bit tough. But Steven said he's having a little glitchy internet connection, but he will be right back with us. So Menpa Wangmo, how are you today? Phuntsog Wangmo, how are things going over there in Western Massachusetts?
Oh, so now Steven came back.
Yes.
There we are. Hi, Steven. How you doing?
Okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And as long as we have you here for a connection, let's start by diving into our chat. So can you just tell us a little bit about your current work, your current situation, what you're doing, where you're at, and how is it going?
Well, the situation, as you well know, in the last 6 months has become rather uncertain, and we're living through somewhat of an unprecedented time, and we have to learn new skills of spontaneity in order to deal with this situation. And so I had a lot of plans for this summer. I had many different courses planned in many different countries in Europe, etc. And basically, they all got canceled. and then, and then this whole Zoom thing just sprung up out of nowhere, and I started doing some chud sessions on through Zoom, and that is an ongoing thing we've been doing every day for the last 6 months. And then I started another course on related to the Santi Maha Sangha, accessing view and practice of Dzogchen, and that went on for a few months, and then it kind of morphed into just a practice setting. And what we do is we Monday, Wednesday, and Saturdays we practice online together. I mean, it's individual in a sense, but in another sense, we're all kind of there together, and we practice from Sutra, Tantra, and Dzogchen. And then I did another course on a welcome course for people who are new to the Dzogchen community. And that attracted quite a few people. And these are people who never got the opportunity to meet Rinpoche. But because of their interest and their desire to participate, I said, let's do something. And I didn't want to see those people who, had this kind of interest and fire and desire. I didn't want to see them just, walk away without getting anything. So those are basically the things I've been doing the last months, and we'll continue with a lot of those things.
Yes, excellent. I'm very glad to hear that there's been some interest of new students, and that they've had a place to land with all of these changes. As many people tuning in know, our founder and teacher, Chogyal Namkhai Norbu, left our earthly circumstance recently, and we have, as a community, been really dealing with that and making that transition. So thank you for offering that kind of place for new students to come in and land in that sense.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we're quite accustomed to working with the online teaching with the Shangsheng Institute and also the Dzogchen community. For many years when Rinpoche was with us, we would do the online webcast all around the world. And for many years, in fact, that was the main way we would connect and share teachings largely. I remember when I first started coming to the Dzogchen community teaching, we had a internet service, but it was only audio, and we would be live on the audio. And so that webcast technology has developed over the years. So we're no strangers to that. So Menpa Wangmo, it looks like that Steven clicked out for just a moment. I'm sure he'll be right back. Do you want to give us a little bit of updates? You're in the Western Mass and working. I think you just finished the diet and lifestyle training in the Tenerife. So can you give us a little updates on those projects?
Okay, thank you. Yes, when we are waiting, Steven, yeah.
Okay, I'm here.
Oh, he's back, so we go with him.
Phuntsog, do you want to tell us a little bit about how things are going for you over there?
Yeah, we're doing well. I think in our region now, the due to the virus is, I think, getting better, and then now we are more sort of like social services more opened. But still, we need to wear masks and so on and so forth. They need to be careful things. I think that's we're going to do for a little while. Our school is still, we are sort of like the physical like gathering part is still, we are closed. As you mentioned, we do everything through the Zoom. And then we just finished the first online Tibetan medicine diet, the first level, last Wednesday. So we had the student exams, and then all the students very highly passed the exams. And then somehow, yeah, the student really, they studied very deeply. I'm so happy. I couldn't imagine, I couldn't believe how they studied. And yeah, they successfully did. And then also all the team, they followed very well. So it's very successfully that part finished. And then now we're going to the second level of the diet. We're hoping to able to start in the sometime in November. So yes, thank you. Ask me this is so we went very well. So I want to say, take this opportunity. Thanks all the teams and also our new teachers, that the student who graduated from Russia, and also all the organizers teams. I want to say all my team, thank you for them. And then especially I want thanks to all the students who took this program.
So you've been putting some of your newly graduated teachers to work with you now, huh?
Yeah, they are I graduated in 2018. We went to Tibet. Yeah, they fully graduate, but they're been with me many years. I mean, and then every single when I'm teaching, they are with me. So also we trained in 2000, end of the 2018, we trained 10 students, I think 10, to become the new teacher. So these two is two of them, 10 of them. And then, yeah, they attended or they did assistant with me, the many teachings, what I done. So yeah, so that's very nice to see. And then also like Irina, she's like Western medicine background. So she has also a lot of knowledge and then her 30, 40 years experience. So it's not only the Tibetan medicine, but basic, she has a lot of healing knowledge. And then on top of that, and then yeah, the both is very hard study, is a hard work. And then, yeah, they did a very good job.
Right. Yes, that is very good to hear. Yeah, I think it's very helpful when people join our program who have a training in the Western medicine and are qualified healthcare professionals working in their field, because then they really have the opportunity to learn and grow from the perspective of Tibetan medicine personally, and also for integrating so many practices and theory into their own practice. And I think that this can be a very important way to share Tibetan medicine with a wider audience, is by having healthcare professionals in the Western medicine learn about it.
Yeah, also, yeah, I totally agree. You know, more like the language explained to the audience is the language is more sort of like adopted. So yeah, you are right.
And for that program you're doing now, is that which countries are most of the students coming from?
The most of them is Europe. I think it came from Europe, but we had all of the world. Yeah, we had also students from Australia, and then also, yeah, all of the world. Yeah, we had some English speakers, and then Italian speakers, and then Spanish speakers. So mainly we translate into Spanish language.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, we're always really appreciative of our team of translators, wherever country we have to use that.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can connect with Steven now. Steven, are you with us? Can you hear us well? I know your video is not on.
Yeah, he's not.
There we go. That's okay. Hopefully we'll get a nice, good chunk of time with him at some point.
Yeah.
So, So, and then Steven just mentioned that they've been doing the chud practice daily for quite some time in their group spiritual practice. And that's interesting. That number one reminds me that we've talked about the chud practice here on the webinar numerous times with Lama Tsultrim and with other guests. And then this is something quite pertinent for governing mental tensions and working with our attachment, huh?
Yeah, is that you also used as a healing method. So I think that it's it would be very good to, sometimes do. It's nice.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I was just reading recently about the biography of the famous teacher, Ayu Khandro. And it's just like you said, the chud is an amazing practice that is used for working with our own minds, working with our own fear and attachment for our own benefit. But then you can apply this practice for healing and apply this to benefit other people in many ways. Yeah. So that's an incredible connection between working with our mind and then working with healing, or almost medicine, you could say, no?
Yeah. So in Tibet, we use the chud practice a lot to dealing with the people's like fears, anxieties, and then also the certain what we call like the provocations, or mainly like the emotional or the mental disabilities or the mental abnormal cases. Yes, we apply a lot the chud practice to overcome from that fears and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's very, very useful. And also in Tibet, it's very common to use the chud practice into the healing.
Menpa Wangmo, do you think traditionally in Tibetan culture, if you had a situation like we have in California with terrible widespread wildfires causing a smoke and destroying buildings and this kind of thing, would you use chud to benefit, for kind of dealing with that problem as far as the environment and the harmonization with the land and nature, or would something else be more appropriate?
Yes, they could practice in the as well as.
Can you say that one more time? We had a little distraction.
Yeah, yes, could use chud into this kind of conditions, but also the other practices. So what the Tibetan medicine or the Tibetan culture, what we say is like somehow the spirits who live on the land, they are something aggravated. So to dealing with that, and then yes, also not only the chud, but also the other practice, but the chud definitely, yes, we would use.
Yeah, I know
back in 1990, end of the 1992 and the beginning of the 1993, I think, when I was in Eastern Tibet, in our region, we had a contagious disease, pretty bad. And then the government side, the epidemic center doctor came, and also Tibetan medicine. They are like me. I was there at the time. But then somehow they said that the disease started more like that the eastern side of the Yangtze River, and then continue sort of like going towards to the west. And then some point they found is we need to do the chud practice. I don't know how they decided to do that. But then there is two special monasteries. Their main practice is that the lineage is that the chud practice. So then they did chud, very intensive chud they did. And then somehow that where that the monastery, that the Chopa monastery, and then when the disease arrived to that sort of like region, then they stopped. They didn't go further. Also, like entire the disease remains like approximately like 2-3 months. So yeah, that the juice somehow is very useful to dealing with these kind of things. Also, the interesting one is that the Jew has sort of like the understanding a lot of like the what is the body, what is the nature, how to sort of like relate like the outer nature and the inner body, and also special like the other sort of like beings, like invisible beings, like spirits. So it's such an interesting one. Yeah. So we Dzogchen community, we have this such great Jew through our Rinpoche. So Adam, you also must be learned some levels of no. So yes, Jew is such a wonderful practice.
Yes, it's very wonderful practice,
So
very
now
traditional and ancient.
maybe we should go with him.
Yes, let's talk to Steven.
Yeah.
Steven, thanks for tuning in with your phone now. Can you hear us well? How's our connection? You have to just
yeah, it's better. My internet connection here was so weak. Now I tuned in with my phone, and I think perhaps this may work.
Yep. Yeah, that's fine. We've had all kinds of interesting configurations on our webinar when people tuning in from a vehicle or with the phone. Yes, we can hear you pretty well. It's a little glitchy, but it's all right. So we'll give Steven just 1 minute to get.
Wait a second. He's saying my finger is over the camera. Okay, fine. I think I got this right now. Okay, there.
That looks quite good, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Wow, I'm a little bit envious. It looks like a nice, bright, sunny day where you are.
Yeah, it is. I'm at the seaside.
Here where I am, unfortunately, we've had some dark red orange sky looking very strange. So, okay, so we were just talking, Menpa Wangmo and I were just chatting about the Chud practice because you had mentioned that you guys were doing Chud practice regularly. And we've talked about that practice on the webinar. And we were just talking about, you know, this is really interesting in terms of Chud works with our condition of our mind and our fears and our attachments and our relationship to our body, but then also can be used for healing and benefiting externally. So it's fascinating stuff.
Yes, definitely. Mostly we're doing Chud in the context of trying to understand something about the kinds of attachment and the kind of resistance that we have in basically just letting go. In general, most of us kind of navigate our way through our lives with attachment, anger, and ignorance. And in some ways, we can find some kind of relief using those kinds of oars. But it's, on the other hand, it's a little clumsy, and we oftentimes find ourselves just struggling and resisting. You know, we suffer with change and our resistance to impermanence. And in the end, even we struggle with that, we discover we have no choice but to basically accept what comes. So maybe there's a way, you know, a path to make that just a little smoother if we have some kind of not just theoretical understanding, but a kind of experiential understanding in regard to resistance, how it comes, how we can with that. So, I mean, I do a lot of courses, you know, related to this particular subject, But in the context of the today's discussion, I thought it might be interesting if there's time. I don't know, but I don't want to take up too much time. But to just discuss a little bit about how the level upon which we are addressing this subject of resistance. So, because sometimes we talk about resistance as if it were like a mental configuration, just some kind of a decision about what it is that fits and what doesn't fit. But actually, there's this kind of constant pushing and pulling in regard to what we like and what we don't like. And we discover that it's not just something mental, but it's like very energetic. It's something very tangible, something that's working like within the body itself. And these resistance, manifests kind of like walls of acceptance and rejection. And so we become burdened, with choices connected to what we like and what we don't like. And instead of relaxing, we get more stressed. Just relaxation and the release that we're looking for, it's not really based on having the freedom to choose one thing over another. But as strange as it may seem, there's this kind of, we discover there's this kind of narrow passageway in which there's like no exit, in which freedom is no longer like a choice as much as it is a kind of inescapable imperative. Now, what I mean by that is like, as long as we have acceptance and rejection and resistance, we feel we have a lot of like choices, choosing one thing over another thing. But ultimately, that kind of freedom is just a little bit exaggerated. And the only way we can actually access a method that's really going to give us some kind of knowledge is by learning, following, and disciplining ourselves in accepting that which is inescapable for us. That means we have to face the fact that there's no exit from our karmic circumstance. And we have to kind of start with that condition. So I don't know, you want me to go on with more, or?
Well, yes, I definitely want to hear more about that. It's fascinating. So yeah, when you bring up the idea of freedom and choice in relation to our mental and our tensions that express energetically and then express somatically in our bodies, but you frame it in terms of freedom, and that's very interesting to me, because in the medical and spiritual traditions, whether it's Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine or different traditions, many times we see like the definition of happiness is actually defined as like free movement and uninhibited mobility. So freedom is understood to be very intrinsic for being happy.
Yeah, just quite the opposite. Yeah, this is a good point, Adam, because it's just quite the opposite. As long as we accept this kind of having a multiplicity of choices It just means that we want to follow the path of resistance, acceptance, and rejection. Choose one thing over another. And that's not where freedom really lies, strangely enough. It begins with understanding the inevitability of the circumstance that we are in right now, each one of us in our own individual place, of course, and all those circumstances may vary to one degree or another, but the imperative is the same. It means recognizing that there is no real exit from that. There's no real kind of escape. And if we want to follow something like, secular mindfulness training, just to smooth out some of the rough edges in regard to our, freedom of choice, then that's fine. I personally have never been involved with that kind of training. You mentioned that I teach mindfulness or something. It's true, but it was always in regard to some spiritual path, mainly related to, in this case, Sutric Buddhism. So I was teaching in that context. And so, we live in a certain time right now where the uncertainty becomes very, very profound. And that is, strangely enough, a kind of fortunate circumstance, because it makes it necessary for us to really look for a ground that doesn't rely upon finding ways that things can fit in place better. We really have to look at ourselves. We sometimes when we're faced with uncertainty, we don't like it. We feel uncomfortable. And the immediate impulse is, we need to make a vision for the future. We need to create a whole picture of how it's going to work for the next years. And then everybody goes rushing around as if they've been threatened by something. And you know how when ants are grouped together and somebody comes in and moves a little bit, all the ants start running in every different direction. They're totally confused. Well, it's the same way with people. When they're faced with this kind of uncertainty, all of a sudden everybody gets an opinion, gets a certain point of view. They hold tightly onto that. And when there's an opposing opinion, everybody gets a little uncomfortable. We don't deal with disagreement too easily. So what do we end up doing? The impulses we should be more authoritarian. We should try to be, maybe gain power. Maybe we should convince others of our particular perspective. We become political. We develop friendships based upon a kind of ideological, consistency or agreement. And we don't tolerate other ideas. So this is acceptance and rejection, or hope and fear. It's manifesting as, in this case, I've defined this as jealousy in a way, because when we're jealous, we are always seeking some way to control. But this kind of control demands intrigue and resisting the potentiality of others. There's a lot of fear, there's tension, and a lot of expressions of authority. And you can find that in societies, you can find that in communities, you can find that within families, etc. So I was just trying to give an example of how, resistance can manifest as a particular emotional sequence. Now, if you look at other there are other emotional sequences too that lead to various kinds of symptoms, all which inevitably stress us out. For example, if we either have too much comfort, we have, let's say, too much wealth, too much merit, too much spiritual accomplishment, maybe we become complacent, everything's too easy, and there's a kind of like subtle pride that gets associated with that kind of complacency. And this is also resistance. We have a resistance to impermanence there, a fear of losing what we have, whether that's wealth or position, prestige, relevance, spiritual power. We grasp onto that. It doesn't matter whether it's material or immaterial. Then when we feel threatened by somebody, sometimes when somebody gets angry at us or a difference of opinion, then we feel like sometimes we're losing our ground. And that feeling is physical. We feel like our feet are somehow a little bit, up in the air. And how can we ground ourselves again? Our response is anger. And we weaponize ourselves with that kind of emotion in order to get our feet back on the ground. It works, kind of. But at the same time, as it works, our presence is a bit compromised. And then with that anger, there's always going to be a kind of self-righteousness. Our tolerance is minimized. We don't let anything, we establish walls of defensiveness. We don't let anything come in. These walls aren't just mental configurations. This is as a, somatic, energetic, like we were saying, everything's connected. So these are just some examples of resistance, acceptance, and rejection that I was talking about. And yes, in the context of Chud, the thing that we're most attached to, that we cherish the most, our bodies, we're offering that totally generously. We're not holding anything back. And we know how attached we are to our bodies. We cut our finger a little bit. We lose a little bit, even the tip of a finger we lose. That's can be very traumatic for people. Imagine what it is to, and in Chud, actually, we're not giving anything in the Chud that is indicated in the Vajrayana. That's a sutra Chud, has that aspect, but we're just training in Chud. We're training in that kind of generosity. And it becomes very, very definitive, very real, a very kind of genuine experience of total and complete generosity. And when we no longer have that kind of attachment, then we become more open. Our resistance is resolved. And our tension is relaxed. And so it's very, very useful and beneficial practice. Now, Menla was talking about Chud practitioners in Tibet at this monastery, and their Chud is so developed and so advanced that perhaps it becomes their activity, their spiritual activity can have this kind of concrete result, actually overcoming some kind of disease or doing that. What we're doing here, we're you know, a little more modest. We're like training in that attitude of complete and total generosity and discovering how that's related to, you know, our attachment, our resistance, etc. So I'm sorry I took a lot of time, but
Steven, we're here to talk to you on our show today. We want to hear what you're saying. Yes, so these principles of resistance and release that you're describing, one thing it reminds me of, there's many things that Chogyal Namkhai Norbu taught that were directly pertinent to this idea. And one analogy that he gave a couple of times that I saw was the idea in Chud and different practices, there's a lot of imagery of cutting and sort of chopping this attachment. But Rinpoche a couple of times gave an analogy of the natural release of attentions, and he gave the analogy of a bundle of sticks tied tightly, representing tensions and the walls.
Yes, I'm
and then
familiar
it
with
can
that.
naturally burst and naturally release those tensions. So I wanted to ask you,
yes,
you explained this resistance very well. So how can you tell us a little bit about how we move into relaxing and releasing that? How do we go about that kind of thing?
Yeah. If you were talking in relation to, let's say, a practice of sutra, then you know the Buddha discussed a lot about suffering, its cause, tension, grasping. And the way you work with that from a sutra perspective is through a kind of focused relaxation on the very point where tension is arising. Now, sometimes we feel tension in the body very, in a very precise way, like a kind of sensation. And there's nothing particularly wrong with sensation, feelings, emotions, etc. But when they get mixed with thoughts, then they start to become, they kind of become a source of paralysis. They block us, you see. And by placing focused attention or relaxation upon the very place, it has to be pinpointed, one's attention, at the place where that tension is arising, we discover a kind of release. If you have experience in meditation or something like that, and you try that a bit, you discover that it really does work. And we discover a kind of opening. You can say something like emptiness. When you get into Vajrayana Buddhism, it's a little bit different, because the sutric point of view is that this tension or grasping, emotional, etc., it's useless. It's something that we should have to abandon. But in the Tantric Buddhism, they try to establish a kind of direct relationship between the manifestation of resistance and its wisdom quality. So that only becomes more evident if one actually engages in the various practices that the Vajrayana suggests. But then we can see how those things are related. But when you come to Dzogchen, the position changes, because you see, in the Vajrayana, they make a big deal out of pure and impure, pure vision and impure vision. But in Dzogchen, that distinction isn't so important. They don't really care whether there's pure vision or impure vision. What they're interested, what's really being suggested there or advised is that we see the intimate connection between whatever vision we have, whatever thought that arises, and its primordial source. And as long as we understand that connection, and not just like a theoretical posturing of some sort, but we've actually done practice and more evident to us as a genuine kind of experience, then it becomes possible to relax in whatever it is that's arising, because we have knowledge of its primordial, ultimate primordial condition, regardless whether it's a good feeling or a bad feeling, whether it's, and in this sense, whatever emotion it is that arises and creates some kind of resistance, it's automatically and spontaneously released with that knowledge. So just as, you know, an example is given sometimes, let's say, of waves in an ocean. It doesn't really matter to the ocean whether there's a big wave or a small wave or a beautiful wave or a very choppy wave. It all resolves itself in the same place. So it's the same thing, more or less, as what you've mentioned there, as this bundle of sticks tied up together. And if one has this kind of knowledge, then those sticks just naturally fall down in place and everything is resolved. We don't need to apply any particular antidotes. We don't need to do some kind form of transformational process, something like that. So this is all very important when one approaches this subject of resistance from this particular level. And then, not only is it released, and we recognize that primordial source, but we come to understand that the emptiness that was indicated in Sutric Buddhism is not really the final thing that's being suggested in Dzogchen. We understand that everything has a particular kind of potentiality, a particular kind of thrust, a kind of self-thrust, and that we are able to, through training, we're able to relax with the self-potentiality of all of our vision and all of our thoughts. And everything becomes somehow useful. Nothing is rejected.
Can you repeat that?
So these are just broad outlines. Yeah.
Can you repeat that last point about self-thrust? And you broke up for just a minute. Can you just repeat that last point you made to bring it home?
We recognize in Sutric Buddhism, everything is kind of resolved in emptiness, you see. But in Dzogchen, the idea is a little bit different. All of our vision and all of our thoughts have a particular kind of potency, a self-potency. It's their own, what I also use the word, its own kind of like, its own thrust, and that thrust resolves itself. That our vision and our thoughts resolve themselves without having to abandon anything. They have their own particular kind of, let's say, power, their own potency. And so we don't need to renounce anything, we don't need to transform anything, but it's absolutely imperative that we recognize the connection between whatever we're experiencing and its ultimate nature. And for that, we need practice. Because in general, we're very addicted to experiencing things with attachment and rejection and resistance. And as long as we are conditioned with that kind of the tools of that particular disease, then we won't find any kind of release. Now, mind you, this is not something, I'm not suggesting that this is something easy to do, but we've been given so many methods, particularly those people who are students of the Santi Maha Sangha. They've been given all the tools that are necessary for understanding this condition, even from the base level of the Santi Maha Sangha. And of course, if they've had the opportunity to go on first, second, etc., different levels, then the possibility for deeper and more revealing, let's say, experiences that will cultivate or develop their knowledge, it's possible. But the issue is more not about searching so much for new methods and new techniques as it is about committing oneself to, how should we put it, a kind of choiceless freedom. You know, we also have a lot of resistance aside in regard to our emotions. We have a lot of resistance related to our concepts and like our discursive thinking. And that, all those concepts and discursiveness, we experience it as a kind of continuity. It appears to us as something very solid, something very independent. We're kind of aware of a multitude of objects, and consciousness is continually seeking out one object or another. It doesn't like to sit still. It doesn't feel grounded unless it is directing itself towards something. So if somebody says, well, relax, we have an idea of like relax, maybe some idea about the body, but it's very, very difficult to relax without having some kind of method. Someone says relax and we go, well, how do I do that? Because we're so fixed on chronic objectification and a tendency to analyze. So in order to relax, now we have to be taught, we need an object. Give me an object to concentrate on. Otherwise, I can't do it. Just something to fix upon. And if we don't have that reference point, then we go, well, how do I do it? So you're given a method, and then as you start to apply that method, then all you start with, you begin to notice that there's this continual process of like labeling. Now this is happening. Now that's happening. There's this kind of process of identification, judgment, and a continual attempt to like rebalance our position. There's a kind of like chronic mental noise. Sometimes that noise is really coherent, and sometimes it's just chaotic. And when it's chaotic, then we just feel tension and we get really upset. You know, we develop opinions, we develop biases, and then we develop, you know, so like ideological structures. And we hold tightly to our position. Tensions develop, and the possibility to relax those tensions, it becomes more remote. So the disease of me, of myself as an individual, it becomes the disease of the society. It becomes the disease of the community, of the state, of the country, the whole planet. So it's not uncommon to hear the view that even this current, you know, pandemic that we're suffering with is the result of some kind of provocation. And provocation is always the result of being distracted by our mental cacophony and not taking time out to observe how our own tensions are a contributing factor to that situation. So it's a wonder that this pandemic has like created, you know, forced us into isolation. And that isolation is always going to demand a bit of self-observation, no matter how painful that is. And obviously this situation, you know, this pandemic, it's a real nuisance. You know, it's a source of overwhelming suffering for many, many people. But on the other hand, it's also a kind of opportunity to actually apply practice, which we've heard and studied, but maybe we didn't have somehow time to do. And maybe there can be some, you know, we can find some positive possibility in all of that, in all that difficulty. So my feeling is like, you know, all of us are wondering like, where do we go from here? How do we go on? Everybody develops their own idea. I think this, I think that, etc., etc. And it's not so important really, our ideas. They're, you know, they're just opinions. It seems more important, though, to have a kind of agility that comes from being able to work with uncertainty and a resistance to uncertainty. And developing that agility, we can adapt ourselves to, you know, all kinds of changing circumstances. But that agility is going to require our capacity to relax, our resistance. And in order to relax our resistance, we first have to become aware of it. We have to take note of it in every kind of circumstance, you know, even small things. And we start to notice that it's manifesting, you know, as we spoke earlier, it manifests in our emotions. It manifests in our on this continual chronic conceptual buzz. It manifests karmically And so we're going to have to do considerable training. It's not going to just come by itself. We can read books and understand the point. It's very, very high and sophisticated points of view. They're interesting. They can help us. But ultimately, the work is very, very, it's very down to earth. It's very kind of nuts and bolts. It's like dealing with our own tensions. And it's easy to get, I go around and I do courses on things and I explain a lot of stuff and talk a lot. And I hear other people talk a lot too. And that's all interesting. And it can be useful. But ultimately, if we're going to understand things like what you were talking about earlier, this falling away through knowledge of spontaneous falling away of all kinds of tension, then we're going to really need to do some work. So it won't happen just, sitting in a comfortable chair and turning on a television, having a drink, and then talking like really interesting ideas. So yeah, this is kind of like the subject of my study in relation to the Santi Maha Sangha. And Rinpoche's idea, when he first started this subject, and I think it was about 1993, he had been already in the West and teaching Dzogchen, not in the context of Santi Maha Sangha, but just generally. And he really had a very high estimation of people's capacity. And he was teaching them things, at least from my perspective at the time, I thought, this is incredible what he's teaching. I'm not sure I'm capable of following this. You see, I didn't have that kind of belief in my capacity. And he was going on with that. And then he started with the Santi Maha Sangha book, the base level book. And even there, I was saying, wow, he expects us to understand this and do these practices. I'm wondering to myself how it's going to happen. And he was doing this because he thought that if he approached Dzogchen from this system in the systematic way, that people's knowledge would mature. And secondly, he did it because he wanted to get some instructors who were keen upon really applying these practices and explaining them to others. He wanted to get a group of people like that together. And the Santi Maha Sangha was moving along full thrust for like 4 or 5 years, you see. And then all of a sudden, it just took a sudden halt because Rinpoche noticed that people were just jumping from one level to another level, but their understanding was not really evolving. So he kind of like pulled back a little bit. And now it's true, we have a lot of instructors and there's a lot of courses going on. And I think this is really helping a lot of people. So this is something very useful. And I think it's going to continue into the future. And I think it has the potential for really developing people's spiritual capacities. I'm talking too much, I think. But you're not interrupting me.
That's really great. No, there's nothing to say with all of that. Nothing to say. Excellent. So yeah, resistance, relaxation, and release, and the teachings of the Santi Maha Sangha of the Chogyal Namkhai Norbu. Excellent. Well, thank you for that for now, Steven. Now let's go to Menpa Wangmo. Menpa Wangmo La. So we're talking about mental tensions and how it works for them to constrain our freedom, and then how we might be able to release that and then enjoy a more, integrated state. So can you tell us, from the perspective of the Tibetan medicine, how does it work, the relationship with our mental tensions and then problems in our life? And how does that work in the theory of Tibetan medicine?
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, I more prefer to listen than the Stevens really. So that's really, it's such a wonderful. Yeah. Since you asked me, so the mental tension, I think, is not only in the Tibetan medicine, but in our any kind of since we are breathing, moving means it's something we're doing, either positive or negative or any kind of things, action done, I think, through our attentions. So our attention is to sort of a background of our actions, looks like. So I think it is very important. But if we have our attention, sometimes is we're not able to change a lot, because in the Tibetan medicine or the Buddhism, we say these the three poisons. So the three poison is with us. There's not so much things to do. But what we can do is be aware of that and try to form the more positive tensions, as the Stephen just said. As the ocean, the big wave, small wave, beautiful wave, not beautiful wave, doesn't matter so much. So important, you need to know what it is, nature of the oceans. If you know really nature of the ocean, the wave comes, go back. So same like that way, if we have attention, it's like tension is sort of like the background. I mean, not the fixed background. Maybe I should not say background. Like the tension is sort of momentarily changing, that the view comes. But then that the main one, that the mind, I think the need to be sort of judging well. So also Rinpoche said is the should not follow your thoughts, sort of before follow the thoughts, you need to sort of analyzing things. So that also in the Tibetan medicine, we also say. So I think is that once we have bad intentions, and then revenge or jealousy or this or that, and then sometimes we believe this is good, because as human dimensions, we believe it is good, and I should do revenge, I should do this, I should do that. But once I down, if I win, the other person is lost. Really, do I have a happiness? Permanent happy brings that through that one? No, it doesn't brings, So this kind of, I think that to understanding is what is the purpose of the human life? What is the value of the human life? If we learn that very well, what is the purpose of the human life? What is the value of the human life? The value of the human life is not something to win something or this or that, to utilize, to benefit to the sentient beings. Also, not only sort of the value of the human being is just like myself, because as we have 6 billion or 7 billion or whatever this that the number of the human, and plus all those sentient beings. So the value of the human is to help if we sort of like learn the value, and then I think it doesn't matter what the other things is happened. So it's a Tibetan medicine, yes, the attention is very important to source of the disease. Like the lot of tension brings a lot of like disease. An example, if you have always tendency of the aggressive anger, want to revenge someone, this like heating up all your blood systems, and then detoxifying in your brain, in your liver. And the result, you will get the liver problems, the blood system problems. And also from there, you can damage to your brains. If you have like too much attachment, I wanted more and more and more. Like now, we emptied all the land, all the sources is like now we are emptied somehow. But still we wanted more. So there is sort of like many stories, how we sort of like wanted. So our desire is never finished. We wanted, always we wanted more and more and more. If I get a white color, I want a blue color, I want brown color. We never finish our desire. Instead of that, if we learn what I want to do, what's the human value, I came into this world to get all those color, collection of the color. No, what do we do? Collect all those colors, all those cars, all those whatever that object is. Because we all know when we die and somehow we disappears. When we disappear, can we take all of them with us, all those like collections to give to the somewhere? No. That's also we know, sort of like at least we see. Many people already passed in front of us. No one took anything. We have experience. So now it's that the value of the human life is not something collecting things. Try to benefit to the century. If we learn these kind of things, also I think we reduce the attachment. If we have a lot of attachment, what will happen? The first, we cannot sleep. Second, we cannot have appetite. Starting from there, then is sort of like that attachment stacking there, someone or something or somewhere. Then till to get that, then our mind is stacking there. And then in the Tibetan medicine, then that sort of like attached there, then brings a lot of like the wind element into the body. And then damage to all our like the nerve system, on top of that the brain systems, and also the damage the heart. So result of that will brings down a lot of like the insomnias, anxieties, fears. So the result of attachment doesn't bring us a happiness. We wanted something more and more. We never finish. So instead of that, if we learn the like value of the human, maybe it's black. Once we get the white color, that's enough. Maybe we do not need a blue color anymore. What do we do, blue color? So this kind of, I think, is like the tension is really, is in the Tibetan medicine, we say like attachment is connected to the earth and the water element, which we call is the pegen. If we have a lot of, the attachment is sort of ignorance is like a connect to the earth and the water element. If we have a lot of ignorance, brings a lot of like the heaviness into our body, then is losing memories, gain weight, lost appetite, and the result became sort of like the unmotivated. You don't want to do anything. So you completely became like ignorance. If you have a lot of attachment, that brings like the hatred into the body. And then, as we said before, like damage all the blood systems. If you have a lot of attachment things, that brings a lot of like the wind element into our body, that damage all the nerve systems, including the brains and the heart. So this is like the result of that. So in the Tibetan medicine, when we're talking like a cause of the disease, long-term cause, short-term cause, long-term cause is that the three poison like attachment, hatred, and ignorance. And the short-term cause of the disease is like the Lung Tipa and the Peking like more like connect to the elements. But the root of the disease is all in one, like we call the ignorance, unknowing, so doesn't pay attention. So for that reason, like our dear master Rinpoche always says, be aware, be aware, be aware for what? Be aware of what you're doing, not other people's doing. Your job is not looking to be aware other people's what they're doing, no. Be aware what are you doing, what are you saying, what are you thinking. So this is sort of like, yeah, my answer is yes, totally is related with the Tibetan medicine, like the tensions and then the health.
Thank you for that, Chila. That's wonderful. Excellent. Okay, so, well, Steven, let's go back to you now. Any final thoughts in our last few minutes? Any final thoughts on how we have everybody, like you said, this real nuisance of the global pandemic, with a lot of people sitting at home, a lot of people in a sheltered environment, circumstance. So what do you recommend for people in daily life, like you said, the nuts and bolts, some actionable items so that they can cultivate this relaxation and release? What do you recommend for people at home, and any final thoughts along those lines?
Well, in this regard, you know, just talking in general, the main thing is Phuntsog was mentioning here, is just having presence and awareness. And Rinpoche always advised us, these are like the two pillars upon which the door of, let's say, mind can be opened as an enlightened possibility. You know, even if we're talking strictly from a secular point of view, not even spiritual point of view, without presence and awareness, it's not possible to get any satisfaction or meaningful purpose in our endeavors. We're just constantly struggling. Whatever thing we may do, even if it's something very, not so significant, just normal tasks. If we do them with some kind of presence and awareness, they have a kind of built-in satisfaction there. But as far as the spiritual path is concerned, it's impossible to engage in any kind of spiritual path without the application of presence and awareness. There is no method or magic bullet or something like that we can just like press a button and something special is going to just pop out of nowhere. Things don't work that way. So this presence and awareness that Rinpoche stressed to all of everyone continually is really very much at the heart of what we're talking about. How we can live in time, how we can have a vivid experience of impermanence, and somehow deal with our, let's say, resistance to uncertainty and impermanence. You know, it's not sufficient to just say, well, you know, everything's impermanent. It's too theoretical. It doesn't give us, we understand that today is not yesterday and tomorrow is going to be something else. And that we understand how time is passing, and we have the idea in our minds that there'll be so many tomorrows, but that's just a kind of imagination of ours. When we're young, maybe that's more concrete. We think to ourselves, oh, I'll do that later. And then we're 25 and we're still saying, I'll do that later. And then we're 35 and then we're really busy with everything, jobs and families and this and that. and we say to ourselves, I'll do that later. And then when we're too old, when we're older, even though we think, oh, maybe it's useful to do something like meaningful, apply something, but our energy and our bodies don't respond anymore. We see the symptoms of the passage of time on our bodies. We also see it in our energy, but it's not so easy to recognize in mind. So, but we can notice, we do notice our resistance to change and all those things that we don't readily accept. We can note it, we can take note of our resistance. But in order to really have a kind of vivid experience of how our body, speech, energy, and mind are all woven in time, we really need to develop some kind of a vivid presence that can distinguish, the pregnant brilliancy of this moment of, let's say, instead of saying this moment, let's just call it nowness. You see, we need to, and in order to do that, we have to be able to observe upon our thought. We can't just observing upon time, it won't be enough, because it's not like we're looking at a watch or a second hand on a watch and saying, oh yes, it's turning, I see, yes, time is going forward. That's not what's really being addressed here. But thought is always occurring in time. So if we have the capacity to relax for a moment or two, just directly upon the first thought that arises, and try to be present in that very arising, in that very thought, without going to a second thought. Without any kind, a second thought would be, let's say, a judgment about the first thought. So if we have that, if we can do that, then just as an example of how presence can be sharpened. And we discover somehow in that presence that things aren't so concrete. Our thoughts aren't so concrete. The walls of our resistance aren't so concrete. And so maybe we can just start with something like that as a method.
Excellent. So interesting. Well, Steven, if people want to connect with you and for your teachings and learn more about your programs, how can they learn more about your programs?
Well, they can, let's see, they can check on NorbuNet. They can check on NorbuNet, Segelgar. No, there's a few courses that are coming up in the next days. They can also write to me. You can put my email address to them. Do you have my email address? Maybe you can put it there.
We can pin that in the notes, absolutely.
Yeah, put that in the notes. And then, Segelgar has an ongoing thing right now. We do on Monday, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, practice of Santi Maha Sangha, of the precious vase. We're doing that, Sutra, Tantra, and Dzogchen. And people who are familiar with Chud and want to be a part of that, well, they can also connect with me and they can come to our sessions that will go every day. We do it every day.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Steven. It's been really great to hear your perspective and your thoughts on these issues. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Menpa Wangmo, any final thoughts and ideas to give to our guests before we wrap up for today?
First, I want to say thank you, Steven. Such a wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, really. And then, yeah, not so much. So I think, as the Steven said, it's we are now is like in the middle of the something which we call the pandemic. We do not know when will disappear or something comes new, or I mean, we do not know what comes tomorrow, you know. So our thoughts or our worry is not such useful at this point. So does not mean is you do not need to careful. Of course, you need to careful listen all the what the experts they like advising us. So we need to do all those things. On top of that, your mental part, don't worry so much because it's in the Shendi Dewa said, you know, Kang the Jews Yonane tele mega chajigo, Keti Jews menane tele mega chajipen. So if there's something we can fix, then why you worry about? You know, if the problem comes, maybe we can go to see the doctors, maybe they can treat it. So why we need to worry about? If there's nothing to do, like a pandemic is like a middle of the nothing came, now the entire world is sort of like a covered. And then we worry is it doesn't help, so that the pandemic doesn't go away. The pandemic didn't say, oh, that person is worried, I don't want to go there. No, it still comes. So there's not so much things to do. So this kind of, you know, careful. And then in the meantime, try do not worry so much. I know it's not easy, not worry. But you try to think sort of like confident in yourself. Once we losing our own confidence, that is the problem. So outside problem is not important. We can careful, we can fix it, we can learn, we can deal with that. But once we lost our own confidence, then is sort of like the business capital money is lost. Now we cannot do anything. So this is your own confidence is very important. If we lose our own confidence, that can cause losing our dandang. In the Tibetan medicine, we call dandang, which is like immune system. Also, once we lose our own confidence, then we lose all our interest to do something. For that reason is keep your confidence, and then to make sure you have like a positive view and then confident. So that is the only I want to say. And then if you want to know more about the Tibetan medicine, what we do, like there's we have some like home remedies for teas to deal with this kind of like the issues like we have some teas for the pandemic. I mean, this COVID-19, when you have something problems. I'm not saying we cure 100%, I'm not saying our tea. But it's home remedies. You can make something to make yourself is confident, more calm down, and also have something, you know, like a hope is very important. So then you have a hope. So this kind of, we have some teas we mentioned many times in our previous webinars. And also our webinar, we had such wonderful guests, and one of them, I mean, each guest is I cannot say this or that, but also we had a very wonderful yoga teacher, the dear brother. So we have also there is like the how we can help either physically or the mental through the yoga breathings. So you tried also this kind of you can look at. And also, as I said, there's a lot of like the interesting things. So I hope you can listen those kind of things, and to make sure is you have you're confident with you. So that's I want to say. And thank you everybody. So again, thank you, Steven. So you are
Thank
such a
you.
far in Italy. So yeah, such a wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Menpa Wangmo. And yes, as Menpa Wangmo just said, everybody at home, feel free to scroll through some of our previous episodes. We've had a lot of very delightful guests who've shared some wonderful tools with us. So we have all of that at your available to you. You can go to our website, the Shangsheng Institute School of Tibetan Medicine, TibetanMedicineSchool.org. You can also find us on YouTube and also, of course, find our content on Facebook and other social media. Thank you so much, Steven. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. And Menpa Wangmo, as always, it's wonderful to have you hosting our show. My name is Adam Okerblom. And we will say goodbye for now. This is the Shangsheng Institute School of Tibetan Medicine webinar series. We're wishing everybody the best of health, stay safe, and don't worry too much, as our teacher said. And we certainly hope to see you next time. Thank you so much, and many blessings. Bye-bye for now.
I forgot
one more thing.
Yeah. So on the October 18th, I'm going to teach how to make the garlic julienne. So the garlic julienne is sort of like the essence and the true building up our immune systems as restoring our body. So due to this pandemic, we're not easy to see practitioners and to get the herbs and this and that. So I decided to teach through the online so everybody can make themselves at the kitchen. So anyone interested, contact us, and then we will make the flyers, and then soon we will get connected. But yeah, just I want to mention that on the 18th October, which is a Sunday. So we'll take approximately 3 to 4 hours, the program.
Wonderful. Okay, yes, October 18th, making the garlic chudlan. Excellent, yeah. And we'll have other courses and offerings coming up soon, so please do keep in touch, everybody. Yeah. Shall we say goodbye for now, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so
bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.